Good day, classmates, and good day, Dr. Gordones. My name is Jomarie Moreno, the leader of Group 3. We are here to discuss the spoken and written language. According to Noam Chomsky, when we study human language, we are approaching what some might call the human essence, the distinctive qualities of mind that are, so far as we know, unique to man. We live in a world of language. Whatever else people do when they come together, whether they play, fight, make love, or make automobiles, they talk. Hardly a moment of our waking lives is free from words, and even in our dreams, we talk and we are talked to. We talk when there is no one around. We even talk to people out of our reaches by using our writings, whether manual or electronic. The possession of language, perhaps more than any other attribute, distinguishes humans from other animals. To understand our humanity, one must understand the nature of language to make us human. Hello! Again, I am Jomarie Moreno, the first reporter for Group 3. Our topic is about spoken and written language. And to start this, let us first answer the question, how do we produce the language? In this topic, we will be discussing the manner of production, its features and stages. Language production of spoken and written language. In psycholinguistics, it tells us that there are stages in the production of language. A process starting from having a concept to express, to translating that concept into linguistic form. Now you might think that to better understand the stages, a model is needed. And yes, there are different models to consider, like the serial model, connectionist model, lexical access model, and many more. However, despite the vast amount of research, there is no model or set of models that can definitely characterize the production of speech as being entirely holistic. Despite their differences, however, all models seem to have some common features. Here are the common features of the language production models. Number 1. They all question how linguistic components are retrieved and assembled during continuous speech. Number 2. They all agree that linguistic information is represented by distinctive units as discussed by the previous reporters on a hierarchy of levels, starting from phonemes, to morphemes, to syllables, to words, to phrases, and so on. Next is that they agree that semantics and syntax come first before phonology, as the former dictate the latter. And last one is that all models share the following stages. And here are the stages of language production. It all starts with a conceptualization, deciding upon which message to convey. It is always the first stage of all the language production models, thinking what to express. Next is the sentence formation. It is as what its name says, forming a sentence. And if you think that it stops there, you got it wrong. The next stage is lexicalization. After forming your sentence, you will be selecting the appropriate words to convey the message, so you may change words inside your brain. After changing the words, you will now move to the next stage, which is syntactic structuring. It is selecting the appropriate order and grammatical rules that govern the selected words. And after thinking if your grammar is already correct, it is the execution of all the necessary motor movement to produce sounds. It is likely the same to spoken and written language. Now that we know how to produce the language, let us now move to the next question, and that is, what is the relationship of spoken and written language? To discuss the relationship between speech and writing, there are two basic theories with variations to consider: the unidirectional and multidirectional. Unidirectional considers the relationship as a one-way sequence in which speech determines the development of writing. However, it was opposed by the multidirectional theory, as it holds that writing also influences speech and that there are other important influences on the development of writing. This is how the unidirectional theory works: a one-way sequence. It tells us that writing is simply a way of preserving speech and may be referred metaphorically as frozen speech. According to Aristotle, words spoken are symbols or signs of affections or impressions of the soul. Written words are the signs of words spoken. This is one of the explicit claims that writing is not a language, that its sole purpose is to represent speech. It is even supported in the early part of the century by prominent linguists claiming that the written forms are secondary symbols of the spoken ones, symbols of symbols. Those are the reasons why the multidirectional theory opposes the unidirectional theory. This theory gives special consideration to the differences between speech and writing. It says that the unidirectional implies that writing did not exist until the alphabet was invented to permit speech to be written down. The theory also implies that spoken language must necessarily be learned before written language. But this is patently contradicted by the deaf and mute community, who acquire written language without even acquiring speech, and by those who learn to read and write a foreign language without being able to speak or understand the spoken language. This assumption can be refuted by showing the many important differences between spoken and written language. And one of those differences is our next topic: their differences in discourse. The distinction of spoken and written discourse differs for so many reasons. Spoken discourse must be understood immediately, while a written discourse can be referred to many times. But to deeply understand their differences, there are things to consider. Here are the distinction in discourse of spoken and written language. Let's start with grammatical complexity. Here, we focus on the grammar structure of spoken and written discourse. Sentences in spoken discourse are short and simple, whereas they are longer and more complex in written discourse. Next is the lexical density. It is a ratio of the content words such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs to the grammatical or function words such as pronouns, prepositions, and articles. Spoken discourse is less lexically dense than written discourse. With a simple speech, "it this." With two words, the meaning is already understood. Next is nominalization. It is presenting actions and events as nouns rather than as verbs. Written discourse has a high level of nominalization, more nouns than verbs. Written discourse tends to have longer noun groups than spoken discourse. Next is explicitness. Writing is more explicit than speech. This is because in written discourse, we lack body language and gestures. Next is contextualization. The knowledge of context is needed to interpret a text. Speech is more attached to context than writing because speech depends on a shared situation and background for interpretation. One can read a book without knowing whether it is written by a male or a female writer. Spontaneity. Spoken discourse lacks organization and is ungrammatical because it is spontaneous, whereas written discourse is organized and grammatical. Spoken discourse contains more uncompleted or fragments or formulated sentences. Topics can be changed in the middle. Speakers may overlap and interrupt each other. And the last one is repetition, hesitations, and redundancy. Spoken discourse contains more repetition, hesitation, and redundancy because it is produced in real time. Spoken discourse has many pauses and fillers such as you know, so that speakers give themselves time to think about what they want to say. And those are the distinction in discourse of the spoken and written language.
Good day! I am Martos Mae Ann, and I will be reporting spoken and written language and IELTS introduction. Let's start with written and spoken language. We will be differentiating the form, function, style, sentence structure, vocabulary, detail, and precision. Before that, let's differentiate written and spoken language. I want to hear from you. I will be waiting for your comments in our chat group and give me your insight. What is the definition of written and spoken language? 20 seconds. For your answers, written language. Written language is the representation of our thoughts into words. May it be in picture or in letters. Any form of communication that is written down, that is called written language. Over 5,500 years ago, it was stated that the first writing system is cuneiform. This is used during the Mesopotamian time or present-day Iraq. Spoken language. When we say spoken language, it is used or produced by articulation. We try to say words. What I am doing right now is an example of spoken language. There are over 6,500 languages around the world. This is according to blogbosu.com, posted October 20, 2020. And the top most language used is English. You might be wondering, why English? Of all those 6,500 languages, why English is our universal language? just like what I told you earlier, written is uses pictures or words, while spoken language is more into articulation. What's then the function of written and spoken language? The function of written language is for us to be more concise and exact with our thoughts, while in spoken language, this is voicing out our written or our ideas. Let's now talk about the difference of written and spoken language according to style. According to lucem.com, written language has only 3 styles. It talks about the printed, cursive, or dikit-dikit, then the author's rule. It depends on the author what kind of standard and functions or format he will apply with regards to the written style. While when we talk about spoken language, for Mr. Martin Jew's 1976, there are only 5 kinds of spoken language. The first one is frozen style, also known as fixed speech. This is the highest form of spoken language because it is used in respectful situations or formal ceremonies like plays, weddings, funerals, and more. Let's now talk about the formal style. When we say formal style, mostly these are very common with educational system, with business plans, or presentation of reports. Consultative style, on the other hand, is the third level for language, and this is basically a planned speech. The only thing that the speaker masters is the information that he will give to the audience. The audience or the listeners would be giving their insights and their feedback. There are actually a participation of the audience. Next will be casual. Casual is just like talking with your friends. And the intimate is a conversation between 2 particular people, very close individual, and these are actually described as a free conversation. Let's now talk the difference of spoken and written according to sentence structure. Let's first discuss spoken language. Most of the time when we talk about spoken language, we use personal pronoun. It talks about our ideas, our insights, our researches about a certain topic. Actually, this is an example. What I'm doing right now is an example of spoken language. All the things that are being discussed here, it's because of my references or my researches. So this is an example of sentence structure for spoken language. Most of the time, when we talk about spoken language sentence structure, there are words that we keep on repeating and some ideas are being emphasized. Now let's go to the written language. For written language sentence structure, it is simply to be remembered about this will be remembered in the abbreviation CUPS. CUPS, C for capitalization, U is for usage, P is for punctuation mark, and S is for spelling. For written languages, these basic things should be considered and monitored properly. Because in written language, capitalization and how a certain word, grammatical structure, content, and the way it will be delivered and the spelling matters. Let's now talk about the vocabulary. Vocabulary, the difference between written and spoken language. For written, it will be observed that the spelling and the proper usage with capitalization, just like what I told you earlier, that's the difference of that particular partnership of the words. Next, detail and precision. I read a lot of articles about the details about how to write properly, how to speak properly. What I noticed is all of those articles will fall into one category. Anyone can create their own rules. Anyone can create their own standard and format, depending on the ideas and on the likes. So if there will be difference of written and spoken language, it will be depending on the person speaking. But just like in any other things, written is most of the time longer than the spoken language. Now, we are done for the first topic, written and spoken language, the differences according to form, function, style, sentence structure, vocabulary, detail, and precision. If you have any question, feel free to message me in our chapter. Let's now talk about IELTS, the second topic for today. IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System. Now, before I go deeper with this topic, I want you to give me your insight once again. Chat it to me or put it in the comment section below. 20 seconds. International English Language Testing System. Let's now discuss this and thank you for answering. All the information here are from Coach Laika. Why did I choose her? Actually, there are a lot of videos about IELTS, but I really like the way she explained IELTS examination, particularly the British Council IELTS examination. She is in partnership. She was actually invited by the Cambridge English British Council to take the examination and share her experiences. So here are the stories that she was able to compile on the video. International English Language Testing System, IELTS is recognized by 10,000 organizations over 140 countries. If you wish to work abroad or in a government, in the office, or just study, it is best advised that you take the IELTS examination. general training is the examination for you. Ways of taking the exam. Paper-based and computer-based are the types or ways of examination. For paper-based, you need to wait for 13 days, but if it's computer, you have to wait for 3 to 5 days. However, you are not going to do it in the comfort of your houses. You have to visit the particular British Council or IELTS office. You are going to take the examination in their office. What will be your preparation for the exam? You are going to have review programs for free if you paid, free webinars, reading materials, and a mock test. There are actually 4 kinds of tests: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So you have to be fluent in these particular areas. You have to understand the way they speak. You have to comprehend the articles. You have to write certain topic in a particular category and be able to converse. This is face-to-face. The speaking. If you want to know more about the IELTS, I suggest that you watch the vlog of Coach Ligon. She gives ideas, she gives her advices, links, and how safe it is, most especially during this pandemic, if you would like to take the examination. If you have questions, feel free to message me in our chat. Again, I am Martos Mae Ann. Thank you so much. Stay safe and see you soonest. Bye!
Good day everyone, this is Khristine and today we'll be talking about context. So in this video we will be having the following topics: definition of context, importance of context, and presupposition 2. So let us start off with a definition of context. Context provides meaning and clarity to the intended message, and that is through the use of a word or phrase that surrounds the unfamiliar word. So according to Leach, context involves relevant aspects of physical and social setting of an utterance, meaning to say it is affected by the environment. Holiday defines context as what is with the text, and it goes beyond what is said and written. It includes other non-verbal drawings on the total environment in which the text unfolds. So, for holiday, context is in the text, however, it is also affected by the environment of the speaker or the writer. Spielberg and Wilson believes that context is not only limited to the physical environment, however, it is also affected by the expectation about the future, the scientific hypothesis, and the religious beliefs, anecdotal memories, general cultural assumption beliefs about, and of course, the mental state of the speaker. Here, why is it that context is important? It is important because of the following reasons. First, it bridges the gap between the authors and their audiences, strengthening readers' comprehension, preventing miscommunication of the writer's intent. So through the use of context, the message that the writer or the author is trying to convey to the readers or listeners are much clearer. So next we do have here the presupposition 2. So presupposition needs to have an assumption in order for us to understand the meaning of a sentence. So It is also tied to the conventional meaning of words and phrases. So, like for example, following examples. A. The king of France is bald. So, we can presuppose that there is a unique king of France. And second example, John knows that Baird invented the television. So we can assume that Baird invented the television. And the third example, John regrets that he kissed Mary. So it is safe to assume that John kissed Mary. So how do we know if it's presupposition or entailments? By the way, entailments are a logical consequence of something. So in order for us to identify whether it's presupposition or entailment, we need to check the negation. So if the sentence is in the positive side, we need to have it in the negative side. So John managed to stop in time becomes John didn't manage to stop in time. So since we do have here two statements, we need to know whether if it's presupposition, if it supports the idea, it's even though the sentence is in uh, a negated form. So John didn't manage to stop in time. So in the first statement, John stopped in time doesn't support the idea that John didn't manage to stop in time. So this is an entailment and not presupposition. Whereas on the other hand, John tried to stop in time supports the idea that John didn't manage to stop in time. So that is a presupposition. Okay. So for the following set of examples, we can observe that even though it is in the negative side, the presupposition doesn't change. So in presupposition, we do have here three ideas. First is with fridge. So he concluded that presupposition is not part of the descriptive meaning of sentence and presupposition are preserved under negation, just like I have said earlier. And he also added that existential presupposition. When you talk about existential presupposition, Fridge believes that the proper nouns in a sentence should mean something or it should exist. Like for example, Kepler died in misery. So Kepler there should mean something in the outside word. So if we have it in the negated sentence, Kepler did not die in misery. So we can, if Kepler doesn't exist, so meaning to say, the statement that Kepler died is not also true. So Russell, on the other hand, does not agree with Fridge's view, because in his theory of description, he believes that even though a sentence lacks proper reference, the sentence could still be meaningful. He also observed that the negative counterparts has ambiguity. So for the example, the King of France is not bad, we can have here two interpretations. The first one is the sentence wide interpretation, and the second one is a more focus on to the verb. So in the sentence or in the statement, it is not the case that both there is a unique king of France and he is bald. So in the first one, it denies the existence of the king of France and um, it also denies that the king is bald. Whereas on the second statement, there is a unique king of France and he is not bald, we can assume that the king, there is a unique king of France. So in the negated or in the negation of the king of France is not Paul, we can have here two assumptions. First is denying the existence of the King of France, and there is a unique king. Third one is Strawson. So he proposed that sentence below does not express a preposition and is therefore neither true or false. The example, the King of France is Paul. He also said that sentence is if the sentence is uttered in a context, it forms sentence context pair. When you say sentence context pair, it expresses a proposition that can be true or false based on a given context. So if the King of France is Paul, was authored during the 16th century, we can know that um, this sentence is most likely true. But if the King of France is Paul was authored during our time right now, we cannot identify whether it's true or false because there is no King of France as we speak right now. So the context-dependent elements like current and now needs to be situated in time and space to contribute to the truth value of the sentence. So we need to know when did when was a specific sentence was uttered in order for us to know whether it's true or false. So we have here the presupposition triggers, definite descriptions, the X and the X. John saw the man with two heads. So we can presuppose that there is a man with two heads. For the verbs, we have the factive, regret, be aware, realize, be odd, and each other. John is aware of how proud Mary is, so we can presuppose that Mary is proud. Second is implicative, manage, forget, happen, and avoid. So John forgot to lock the door. So we can presuppose that John should have locked the door, however, he wasn't able to do that. Change of state, stop, start, continue, finish, take, leave, enter, come, go, and arrive. So John went to the movies. So we can presuppose that when this statement was uttered, John was not at the movies because he went to see a movie. So we have here iteratives again, anymore, return, another time, restore, repeat for the nth time. So in the example, John doesn't like Mary anymore, so we can presuppose that John liked Mary once or John liked Mary in the earlier times, but John doesn't like Mary now. So we have here the temporal clauses before X, since X, after X, whenever X, as X, during X. During the War of 1812, the British burned down the White House. So we can presuppose that there was a war of 1812. Contrastive. Contrastive intonation to, back, in return, comparative, and past plus. So in the example, John hit Mary back. So we can presuppose that Mary hit John first. So counterfactuals, conditional or modal expressions stating facts contrary to how the word is. If John had entered the raffle, he would have won. However, we can presuppose that John didn't enter any raffle. That's why he wasn't able to win. So, presuppositions can also be defeated if the given facts are inconsistent, because presupposition only arises when the the information or the details are consistent. Like in the given example, in context A, John got a job out of grad school, so everybody knows that John went to a grad school program. So in a sentence, at least John won't have to regret doing a PhD, we can presuppose that John did a PhD because we know for a fact that John went to a grad school program. Context B. It is a common knowledge that John didn't get into the doctoral program. So the sentence, at least John won't have to regret doing a PhD, um, it doesn't have a presupposition because we know that John didn't get into a grad school program. So here are my resources. Thank you so much for listening.
Good day, Dr. Gordonas, and good day, classmates. My name is Khristine and Ligon, and I'll discuss about the classifications of context. So before we proceed to the main topic, let's review first what is the meaning of context. So context means it helps readers understand what they otherwise wouldn't be able to comprehend. That is according to Carlos Lee in the year 2015. And another, context is as those aspects of circumstance of actual language use which are taken as relevant to meaning according to Widdowson in the year 2000. So in other words, context means that it is a part of a discourse that surrounds a word or passage that can give a clearer picture of the meaning it conveys. So let's proceed to the main topic, which is all about the classifications of context. There are 3 classifications of context, and these are linguistic context, situational context, and cultural context. So let us discuss first what is the meaning of linguistic context. Linguistic context refers to the context within the discourse, that is, the relationship between words, phrases, sentences, and even paragraphs. In communication and composition, linguistic context refers to the words and sentences that surrounds any part of the discourse that helps determine the meaning. Let's have an example. Let's use the word bachelor. If we are going to look at the word bachelor alone, we are not aware of the meaning of it, right? So, we will not understand what is the meaning of bachelor. But what if we are going to use it in this way? He is a bachelor. As you can see, we have added words or phrase in the word bachelor. So that gives us an idea that the word bachelor means that he is a man that is not married yet, or simply the word bachelor means a man. So that is the meaning of linguistic context. Now, there are 3 aspects of linguistic context. The first one is deictic linguistic context, or it is known as deixis. Another is context, and another one is collocation. Let's try to understand first what is the meaning of deictic linguistic context, or deixis. In a language event, the participants must know where they are in space and time, and these features relate directly to deictic context. Deictic linguistic context, or deixis, is the use of general words and phrases to refer a specific time, place, and person in the context. The participants in the discourse must be aware of the place and time that they are in during the conversation. There are deictic expressions that helps us to establish deictic rules which derive from the fact that in normal language behavior the speaker addresses his utterances to another person and may refer to himself, a certain place, or to a time. Most of the time, deictic expressions are personal pronouns, demonstratives, adverbs, and tenses. And deictic expressions helps us to identify the who, where, and when in the sentence. Let's say for example, have you been in this country long? As you have noticed, the words you and country are underlined. Why? Because the words you and country are deictic. In what sense? The word you refers to the person being addressed in the sentence. And the word country refers to the place where the conversation happens. So that is deictic linguistic context or deixis. Next one. Let's have the cotext linguistic context. It is the case that any sentence other than the first in a fragment of discourse will have the whole of its interpretation forcibly constrained by a preceding text, not just those phrases which obviously and specifically refer to the preceding text. In simple terms, linguistic context means that these are the words surrounding a particular word or passage within a text that provides context and helps determine the meaning. It is a set of words also, or Context rather is a set of words used in the same phrase in the sentence. And cotext linguistic context, or simply cotext, is known as keywords in the context. Let's have an example. A key to a door. A key on a keyboard. A key to solve the problem. You can notice that the words door, keyboard, and problem are underlined. Why? Because the words door, keyboard, and problem are the cotext of the word key. So that is the cotext linguistic context. And then last for the linguistic context is collocation linguistic context. When we say collocation, it is not simply a manner of association of ideas. It is the recognition of the importance of syntagmatic relation between words. Collocation is a familiar grouping of words, especially those words that are grouped together and thereby convey meanings by association. It is a particular combination, or collocation is a particular combination of words used. The groupings of the words that appear in the collocation linguistic context creates meaning because of its habitual use. Let's say for example, bite and teeth, bark and dog, blonde and hair. Another example is, we know for a fact that milk is white in color, but we are not saying white milk, but instead, we just call milk as milk alone. So that is collocation linguistic context. The next classification of context is situation context. When we say situation context or situational context, or context of situation, refers to the environment, time, and place in which discourse occurs, and also the relationship between the participants. So, situational context describes the reason why something is occurring and the appropriate behavior and actions associated with the situation. Situational context is defined by the event itself. I repeat, situational context is defined by the event itself. Let's say, for example, Do you think this is bringing rain? While reading the sentence, we are not able to understand or we are not able to comprehend the meaning of the sentence. Not unless there is someone who is talking and pointing out into the clouds that, or the speaker in the sentence points out to the clouds or to the dark clouds and saying that it will bring rain. And in that way, the sentence will make sense. So that is situational context. It depends upon the situation or the environment, time, and place in which the discourse happens or which the conversation happens. Okay, next one. The last classification of context is called cultural context. So cultural context refers to the culture, customs, and background of epoch and language communities in which the speaker participates. The culture of the speaker and the receiver affects how they understand the messages conveyed. Cultural context means it is the meanings and assumptions that people share in a community. These personal experiences, beliefs, and backgrounds contribute to the meaning of the discourse, or it contributes on how the receiver and the speaker understands the text or the sentences that they are saying. Language is a social phenomenon, and it is closely tied up with the social structure and value systems of society. And another, language cannot avoid being influenced by all these factors like social roles, social status, sex, age, and etc. So those are the cultural, so that is rather cultural context. The next topic that I'm going to discuss is all about the role of the context. There are three roles of context. The first one is eliminating ambiguity. The second one is indicating reference. And the third one is detecting conversational implicatures. Now, let me discuss first eliminating ambiguity. But before we proceed, let's define first what is ambiguity. Ambiguity refers to a word, phrase, sentence, or group of sentences with more than one possible interpretation or meaning. It is known that ambiguity somewhat confuses the readers of what does the text mean or what does the sentence mean. But context helps the readers to understand the meaning of the phrase or the sentence that someone is reading. Now, there are two types of ambiguity, or there are two types of ambiguity. The first one is lexical ambiguity. Lexical ambiguity. Lexical ambiguity is the potential for multiple interpretations of spoken or written language that renders it difficult or impossible to understand without some additional information. So, lexical ambiguity simply means that the sentence or the text conveys a word that has one or two meanings. In order for the reader to understand the text, it should provide some additional information. Let's say, for example, I saw her duck. What you can notice is that I have underlined the word duck. Why? Because there is a lexical ambiguity here in the sentence. I saw her duck can mean two things. It is either, number one, the speaker saw a girl holding a duck, which is an animal, or another, the speaker saw a woman or a girl that gently bends his head or ducks, which is slowly bending the body or slowly bending and covering your head. So that is lexical ambiguity. There is a presence of a word that means one or more, or that conveys one or more meaning. Okay? Next one is structural ambiguity or ambiguity. It is the presence of two or more possible meanings within a single sentence or sequence of words. If we look at the example, let's say for example, the chicken is ready to eat. We will notice that there is a structural ambiguity or syntactical ambiguity. Why? Because the phrase ready to eat can mean two things. It is either the chicken, which is an animal, is really ready to eat or is ready to eat the food, or the chicken is already cooked and it is ready for them to be eaten. So that is structural ambiguity, wherein the phrase or the sentence can have two or more possible meaning. Okay? Next one is indicating reference. So when we say referent, it means that reference is a person, thing, or idea that a word or expression denotes, stands for, or simply it refers to. It is the person, thing, or idea that it refers. To avoid repetition, we usually use such words like I, you, he, this, that, and etc. to replace some noun phrases, or words like do, can, should, and etc. to replace verb phrases, or then there, etc. to replace adverbial phrase of time and place. Let's have an example in order for us to understand reference. Mary saw me. And another one is the black door is open. Let's have first the sentence Mary saw me. As you can see, the words Mary and me are underlined. Why? Because the word Mary or Mary is the referent of the particular person in whom the speaker is referring to. Because the speaker here in the sentence says that Mary saw him. Right? And another one is the word me. The reason why the word me is underlined here in the sentence, that is because me is referring to the speaker in the sentence. So that is why the words Mary and me are referents. And another, the black door is open. As you can see, the word door is underlined. Why? Because the word door is a referent to a concrete object, which is specifically pertaining to a black door. So that is indicating reference. Let me repeat. When we say reference, it is the person, thing, or idea that a word or expression refers to. Okay? And then last one. It is detecting conversational implicatures. So, conversational implicatures means to account for what a speaker can imply, suggest, or mean, as distinct from what the speaker literally says, and it is deduced on the basis of the conversational meaning of words together within a context. Conversational implicature is an indirect or implicit speech act that is meant by a speaker's utterance that is not part of what is explicitly said. Implicature happens when the speaker wants to express something in an implicit or indirect way. In conversations, people make communication. Speaker uses different ways to express their message. Let's say, for example, I have here two sets of examples. Student 1, do you like mathematics? And then the student 2 replied, let's just say I don't jump for joy before class. We can notice that the first student asks if the second student likes math. The second student can simply answer no. But as you can see, the student answered, let's just say I don't jump for joy before class. It is an indirect message that means that the second student or the one that is being asked is not directly saying that he is not interested in the subject or he doesn't like the subject. So that sentence or that example sentence shows a conversational implicature. And another example, Mary asked, "Do you like Tim?" And answered, He's the cream in my coffee." As you have noticed, the first person or Mary asked if Anne likes Tim. Anne can simply say yes, but Anne answered that he's the cream in my coffee. Anne doesn't directly said that he likes Tim, but she used rather, Anne used a metaphor to describe her likeness to Tim, or to describe the feeling that he has for Tim. He's the cream in my coffee. So, the feelings that he have for Tim, or Anne used the conversational implicature to express her feelings towards Tim, and that is in the use of metaphor. So that is the meaning of detecting conversational implicature. So these are the references that I used for my report, and thank you so much for listening. God bless, and thank you.
Welcome everyone. I am Pauleen Ann Moreno, your discussant today. Allow me to give you the ethnography of communication with Heinz speaking model. But before we commence to our main discussion, let me ask you this question. How to craft realistic and effective communication? I know someone who can help us. Let me introduce to you to the man who created the term communicative competence, none other than Mr. Dal Heinz. He is a social linguist and the first to impose Chomskyan linguistics, which focuses on the aspects of language that are uniform across speakers. On the other hand, Heinz is concerned with the actual linguistic variety that calls for concepts and methods that will enable us to deal with what we call diversity. He also added that the ethnography of speaking is concerned not simply with language structure, but with language use, with rules of speaking, the ways in which speakers associate particular modes of speaking, topics or message forms with particular settings and activities. Savalon Troy added that communicative competence is about knowing the language scope, but also what to say to them and how to say it in any given situation. Further, it involves social and cultural knowledge. That is why Heinz created this speaking model, which comprises of components. These components will make up a set of guidelines an analyst can use in attempting to find out what aspects of context are important and relevant from the point of view of participants. Yet again, language and culture are intertwined and cannot be separated. For us us to enable to manifest communicative competence, Haim's speaking model will be of great help. Let us now go to the first component, setting. It refers to the time and place of a speech act, and in general, to the physical circumstances. Next component is participants. It refers to the speaker and audience. It answers the question, who is the audience? What is their demographic profile? What are their interests? Simply, these are the speakers and the audience or listeners. Next component we have is ends. It refers to the purposes, goals, and outcomes of communication. It answers the question, what is the reason behind why you're communicating? Next component we have is act sequence. It refers to form and order of the event. Let's say, is it for inviting or apologizing to someone? Next component is key. It refers to the clues that establish the tone, manner, or spirit of the speech act. Simply, it is the mood, the tone, and the manner, the way the speaking is performed, the style, the manner which you deliver your message. Is it, or are you joking, or for a serious mode, or you are in blissful mode? Next component is instrumentalities. It refers to the forms and modes of speech. Are you talking over the phone, or are you having your speech on a stage, or are you having a debate? Next is norms. It refers to the social rules governing the event and participants' action and reaction. Action is the interpretation. Reaction is the interaction. You have to understand the culture in which you are communicating. Time and again, it is not enough to know the language, but what approach or social rules within that speech community. Last component is genre. It refers to the kind of speech act or event. We must bear in mind the types of communication will depend on the culture again. Yet again, language and culture are intertwined and cannot be separated. For us to easily remember Haim's speaking model. S stands for setting, participants, ends, act sequence, key, instrumentalities, norms, and genre. These components will help us to establish communicative competence. Not only that, it is notable that all components will carry the same weight to various participants at any given time. The components of speaking model cannot stand alone. They rely on and influence the others, regardless to the participants. Assessing the linkages between the components could serve as an additional meta-linguistic task, but surely sharpening the understanding of the speech event as a whole. That's a wrap. Thank you and have a great day ahead.